The galaxy was old, and its stars burned low, but there were still places full of mystery. Far away, in the great floating library of Yalvara, alien scholars gathered in a round hall made of crystal walls. The air shimmered with quiet light. From a dying star outside, here knowledge from every known world was kept, and here strange and forgotten stories were shared. Most of these stories were myths, nothing more than echoes of long-lost times. But tonight, one name returned to their conversations, a name that made even the oldest of them pause. Humans. Among the scholars was Karen of the Vera species. Her tall frame was covered in smooth silver skin, and her bright eyes never missed details. She had read about humans before, in dusty archives that no one visited anymore. The records were vague, a race that had risen fast, spread across the stars and then vanished completely thousands of years ago. No one knew if they had truly existed or if they were only a creation of imagination. Some called them heroes, others monsters. Many called them a myth. As the night went on, the conversation turned to other matters, but Karen could not stop thinking about the old stories. She returned to her private chamber, where she kept her own secret collection of data. Crystals. Carefully, she picked one up and placed it into the small projector. Blue light filled the room, showing grainy images, tall figures in strange armor, ships shaped like spears cutting through the black. The human eyes looked directly at the viewer, as if staring through time. She was still studying the images when an alarm suddenly broke the silence. A message appeared on her console. Unidentified signal detected. Origin: uncharted Sector 9 Delta. Karen frowned. Signals from that region where Reddit was a dead zone of empty space. Yet this one pulsed with steady rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. She opened the audio feed, and a voice crackled through the static, deep and strange, speaking in a language she did not know. The translator failed to process the words, but it caught a repeating sound. To Karen's ears, it was both alien and haunting. Her hands trembled slightly as she accessed the library's ancient archives. She searched for audio patterns matching the signal. The result came with a single line. Language: Human Terran. Standard, ancient. Her breath caught. She played the message again, slower this time, and realized the voice was saying the same phrase over and over. She did not understand the meaning, but she felt the weight in the tone. The Council of Scholars would not believe her. They would laugh and remind her that chasing myths only wastes time. But Karen could not ignore the pull of curiosity. Before the day ended, she had secured a small exploration vessel from the library's dock. She sent no public notice. This was her own mission. The journey to Sector 9 Delta took 2 cycles. Space grew darker there, the stars fewer, until she found herself surrounded by emptiness. Her scanners finally caught the source, a massive object drifting slowly. It was a ship, larger than any current design, its surface scarred by battle and age. Parts of it glowed faintly, but most of it was dead metal. She approached with caution. The vessel's design was unlike anything in her people's database. It looked built for strength, with thick armor and heavy weapon ports. She felt an odd sense of presence, as if the ship itself was watching her. Docking clamps engaged with a loud metallic echo, and her airlock connected to the unknown craft. Inside, the corridors were dark and cold. Her footsteps rang sharply in the silence. Strange symbols marked the walls, sharp, straight lines, nothing. Like the curves of Vera writing, dust floated in the air, disturbed only by her movement. As she ventured deeper, she found a wide chamber filled with strange objects, metal frames, sealed crates, and several large glass pods. The pods were covered in frost, and within them, shapes. She leaned closer to one. It was a figure, pale-skinned, wearing armor marked with strange patches. Its face was unlike any alien she had ever seen. Short nose, rounded features, but there was something strong in the jawline. Her scanner beeped. Life signs detected. She stepped back, shock flooding her mind. This was impossible. Thousands of years had passed since humans had last been mentioned in any record. And yet here was one alive, though in deep sleep. Before she could decide what to do, a sudden hum filled the chamber. Lights flickered on, and a voice echoed through the room. It spoke the same ancient language as the signal she had heard before, but now her translator caught fragments. Guardian protocol. Active. Karen's instincts told her something was happening, something the ship had been waiting for. The hum grew louder, and in the far shadows, another set of lights activated, showing the outline of heavy machinery. She took a slow step back toward her ship, but the pod in front of her hissed softly. The frost began to melt, and the glass grew clear. Through the thin mist, the human's eyes opened. They were sharp, bright, and fixed directly on her. Karen felt her heart race. For a moment, no one moved. The human's lips parted as if to speak, but the language was still unknown to her. The ship's systems came fully alive, screens lighting up with warning symbols. Somewhere deep inside, engines began to power up, vibrating through the floor. Then, in the corridor behind her, a metallic crash rang out. Something was boarding the ship. Karen turned her head for just a moment, but when she looked back, the human was already pushing against the glass. The locks on the pod snapping open one by one. The hum of the ship became a roar. The air was charged with tension. She didn't know who or what was coming. But she understood one thing very clearly. This was no myth anymore. Humanity was real, and the galaxy was about to remember them. And, in that freezing, flickering chamber, as the pod slowly opened and shadows moved in the distance, Karen realized that she had stepped into the center of a story far bigger than anything she had ever read. Something told her that once it began, there would be no going back. The airlock behind her shuddered, the sound of heavy tools cutting through metal. The human's eyes never left hers, even as he reached for something beside him, an old weapon, its barrel scorched from long-ago battles. Karen took a step toward him, torn between fear and the burning need to know what came next. Somewhere deep in the ship's systems, an ancient voice repeated its message again. The words rolled like distant thunder, and though she still did not understand them, Karen felt the meaning in her bones. It was a warning and a promise. The final lock on the pod clicked open. Human stood, tall and steady despite the centuries. Outside, the sound of boarding claws scraping metal grew louder. Karen's breath caught in her throat. The legend was awake. The galaxy would never be the same. Karen's heart beat faster as the human stepped out of the pod. The air smelled of cold metal and ancient dust. His movements were slow at first, stiff, but there was strength in every step. His eyes scanned the room like a soldier checking for danger. He said something in that same old language, his voice deep, sharp, and filled with urgency. She shook her head to show she did not understand. But his tone made it clear something was wrong. The ship's lights grew brighter in short bursts, then dimmed again, as if fighting to stay alive after centuries of silence. Strange symbols scrolled across the nearest wall screen, and her translator worked quickly, giving only broken fragments. Intruders detected. Boarding in progress. Activate defense protocols. Karen's fingers twitched toward her sidearm, but she stopped herself. The human was armed, now holding that old weapon with familiarity. His armor was worn, but each scratch seemed to tell a story. He looked toward the hallway where the noise had come from, then back at her, and motioned with his hand in a sharp, quick gesture. She understood the meaning without words. Stay behind him. The two moved slowly into the next corridor. The lights flickered as they passed, illuminating faded markings on the walls. The air felt heavier here, and somewhere far off, a deep thudding sound echoed. Karen's mind raced. She had come to investigate a legend, and now she was walking through it. A sudden metallic crash tore through the silence. Karen flinched, but the human did not. He crouched low, moving forward quietly, his weapon raised. She followed, her eyes scanning every shadow. The ship's AI voice spoke again, still broken but clearer than before. Guardian active. Hostiles inside perimeter. They reached a massive doorway, half open and frozen in place. Died. Beyond it, faint blue light spilled into the dark. The human pressed a button on the side, and the door groaned, slowly lifting higher. The sound made Karen nervous. It was loud enough to give away their position. Inside the room, she saw more pods like the one the human had come from, though most were cracked or dark. Some had only bones inside. Others were empty, their glass shattered long ago. The human glanced at them but kept moving. This was not his goal. Karen's translator finally caught a word he muttered under his breath. Crew. She realized he was looking for others as people. But in this graveyard of a ship, the chances of finding more survivors seemed small. Before she could speak, movement flashed in the corner of her vision. A tall, insect-like figure stepped into the room, its thin limbs carrying a weapon that hissed faintly. Its eyes glowed green in the dim light. Karen knew this species, the Drex Raiders, killers. If they were here, they had tracked the same signal she had. But their purpose was never discovery, only plunder. The human saw the Drex too. Without hesitation, he raised his weapon and fired. The sound was loud, sharp, and powerful. The Drex fell instantly, its body twitching before going still. The smell of burnt armor filled the room, but the shot had been loud. It's very loud. Now more footsteps came from the corridors, fast, heavy, and many. The human turned to her, his face hard. He pointed toward the docking bay and said one word, clear and sharp, run. They sprinted through the corridors. The ship's alarms began to wail, red lights flashing along the walls. The old AI repeated warnings in multiple languages, including Karen's own. Security breach. Hostiles advancing. Evacuate. Karen's breath came fast. But the human moved with speed and precision, every turn taken without hesitation, as if the layout of the ship was burned into his memory. They passed through a narrow hallway where 2 more Drex appeared from the shadows. The human's weapon roared again, each shot clean and precise. Karen noticed he never wasted a single round. Finally, they reached the docking bay. Through the open blast doors, she saw her small exploration vessel still attached. Relief washed over her, but it didn't last. 3 Drex were already climbing onto her ship, trying to break inside. The human dropped to one knee, firing rapidly. 2 of the Drex fell before they even noticed him. The third turned, hissing, and charged. Karen drew her own weapon this time and fired the energy blast. Hitting the alien square in the chest, it collapsed, motionless. They reached the airlock. But before entering, the human paused and looked back down the long corridor they had come from. The Drex were still coming, shadows moving quickly under the flashing red lights. He stepped back into the docking bay, pressing a panel on the wall. The massive bay doors began to close, thick metal grinding as it sealed the way behind them. Karen stepped into her ship and looked back, just in time to see the last image before the doors shut completely. The human, framed in red light weapon, raised, watching the corridor. Then he turned and followed her inside. The moment they were aboard, Karen activated the launch sequence. Her ship's engines roared to life, and the clamps released. Through the viewing screen, she saw the ancient human vessel drift away, lights flickering like the heartbeat of something not quite dead. The human stood beside her, staring at the sight. His face was unreadable, but his eyes carried a weight. She could feel. Slowly he reached up and touched the screen, as if saying goodbye to the ship. Then he looked at her and spoke in his language again, softer this time. The translator struggled, processing each sound carefully, until finally, in a low mechanical voice, it gave her the meaning, not safe here. We must go to Earth. Karen felt her pulse quicken. Earth, the mythical homeworld of humanity. Every story she had ever read claimed it was gone, dead, and buried under time. But here was a living human telling her otherwise. Outside, in the dark of space, her sensors picked up multiple Drex ships moving toward them. Without hesitation, she engaged the jump drive. Stars stretched into lines, and the blackness swallowed them whole. She sat in silence for a long time after that, watching the human from the corner of her eye. He was scanning the ship's controls, learning them quickly, without needing to be told. There was a sharpness to him, like a blade that had been sleeping but was ready to cut again. Karen didn't know what they would find on Earth, or if it was even still there. But she knew one thing: The legend of humanity was no longer just a story. It was alive, standing right beside her. And whatever came next, the galaxy was not ready. The jump ended with a shudder, and the stars returned. Karen's ship floated in a quiet patch of space, far from the raiders that had been chasing them. The hum of the engines was the only sound, but the tension inside the cabin was heavy. The human sat in the co-pilot's seat now, his eyes fixed on the displays. Every so often, he pressed a button or turned to control, learning her ship as if he had flown it before. Karen watched him carefully. His armor was old, the kind seen only in ancient records. Faded markings covered its symbols she didn't understand, but they looked important. The weapon in his hands was built for killing, yet he held it with the calm of someone who had done this all his life. He turned to her suddenly and spoke. The translator worked slowly, pausing between each word. Name, Elias Vance, she repeated. It, to be sure, she had heard correctly. He nodded once, and he pointed to himself and said it again. Elias Vance, a name carried across millennia, now spoken aloud for the first time in thousands of years. She pointed to herself, Karen. The human's eyes softened for a moment, a small sign of understanding, but his attention shifted. Quickly back to the navigation screen, steady hands. He began plotting a course toward a distant set of coordinates. The translator caught his words this time. Earth must go. Dangerous. Not much time. Karen hesitated. Earth is gone, she said slowly, hoping the translator would make the meaning clear. Elias shook his head firmly. It's not gone, he replied. The way he said it left no room for doubt. The ship's computer beeped, showing a warning multiple signatures at the edge of their range. Karen's heart tightened. Drex scouts. Somehow, they had tracked them again. She accelerated, and the stars blurred as they began another jump. During the travel, she studied him quietly. His eyes were always scanning, never still. His hands rested near his weapon even when seated. He seemed ready for battle at any moment. She wondered how long he had been asleep in that frozen pod, and what memories still haunted him. When the jump ended, they were in a region Karen had never visited before. The stars here felt dimmer, and the air inside the ship felt colder. Elias pointed ahead, toward a faint light barely visible against the darkness. There, he said as they approached, the light grew, revealing the shape of a massive derelict station drifting silently. The structure was older than any design in her people's records. Parts of it were broken away, floating as silent debris. This is not Earth, Karen said carefully. Elias didn't answer. He simply gestured for her to dock. The station's docking bay was huge, built for ships far larger than hers. Once inside, the silence was crushing. Karen could hear the faint sound of their footsteps on the metal floor. The place smelled of dust and decay, but something else lingered. Weapon grease. The scent of machines not fully dead. Elias moved ahead of her, weapon ready. The lights flickered weakly, casting long shadows. Oh. Then, from somewhere deep within, the station, a low mechanical hum, began to rise. Karen stopped, looking around nervously. The hum grew louder, and in the distance, massive doors slowly began to slide open. Beyond the doors was a hall lined with statues, that they were not statues. They were armored suits, each standing tall and silent, weapons in their hands. Human designs. Elias walked past them without hesitation, as if he knew this place well. Karen realized this was not just a station, it was a vault. At the end of the hall, they reached a control room. Elias began activating panels with quick, practiced movements. Symbols flashed across old screens, and for the first time, Karen saw a map, one that showed not only stars, but battle lines, fleets, and outposts. The translator picked up his voice as he spoke to himself. Still here. Still waiting. Then he turned to her. War came, he said slowly. We fought. Almost won. Then betrayal. Karen leaned closer. Who betrayed you? The translator hesitated, then gave her his answer. Our own allies. They feared us. They feared what humans could do. Before she could respond, the station's lights fully came alive. Somewhere deep below, machinery roared to life after centuries of silence. A deep voice echoed through the halls, different from the ship's. AI. Stronger. Older. The translator identified the words, Guardian, Elias, Vance. Command recognized. Systems at 10%. Awakening protocol initiated. Karen felt a chill run down her spine. Awakening what? She asked. Elias didn't answer. He simply looked out of the large viewing window as shadows began to move. Beyond the station, slowly, one by one, enormous shapes drifted into the light warships. Human warships. They were not fully powered, their hulls scarred. But they were there, an entire fleet hidden in the darkness. Karen's mouth went dry. These were the kinds of ships the galaxy had only seen in paintings and ancient tales. If they were truly functional, they could change everything. Then the moment broke. Her ship's alarm blared Drek's signatures again, closing fast. Elias's expression hardened. He turned to her and spoke with the kind of calm that came only from experience. We leave. Now. They ran back toward the docking bay. The station's lights flickered as the power tried to spread through its ancient systems. In the shadows, Karen thought she saw some of the armored suits begin to shift, their eyes glowing faintly. But she didn't have time to confirm it. As they launched from the station, she saw the Drek's fleet arriving, sleek black ships cutting through the darkness like knives. She prepared to jump again, but Elias placed his hand over hers and shook his head. Instead, he began pressing commands into her console. Coordinates filled the screen, new ones. The translator caught his words, not yet to Earth. First, we need the key. The stars stretched again as the jump engaged, and Karen leaned back in her seat, mind racing. She had come here for answers, but with every step forward, the mystery only grew deeper. The human beside her was more than a survivor. He was a soldier with a mission, and now the galaxy's most dangerous legend was awake and moving. The jump ended in a sudden flash of light, and the black void of space returned. Karen checked the scanners. No Drek signals, at least not yet, but she knew they would come. The Dreks never gave up once they found prey. Elias Vance sat in silence. Beside her, eyes fixed on the navigation display, his hand rested near his weapon, not because he expected to use it right now, because it was habitant instinct, sharpened by a lifetime of war. He had given her new coordinates, and she had not asked questions. For now, she followed his lead. The stars outside shifted slowly as they approached a faint, cold-looking planet surrounded by debris. It was small, its surface covered in ice and jagged mountains. Karen's sensors read no active life, no structures, nothing to suggest why anyone would come here. This is the key, she asked carefully. The translator processed Elias's reply. Here. Weapon cache. Hidden. Before war ended. His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it. The ship descended through thin, frozen clouds and landed on a flat plain of ice. The cold here was beyond anything Karen's species could endure without her suit. Elias stepped out into the blinding white without hesitation, his breath forming clouds in the frozen air. They walked toward a jagged cliff face. At first it seemed like nothing more than ice and rock, but then Elias knelt, brushed snow aside, and revealed a strange metallic surface beneath. He tapped a sequence on a small device from his belt, and the ground shuddered. A long, thin section of the ice split apart, revealing a dark opening. Inside was a tunnel, metal walls, frost-covered lights, and the faint hum of machinery that had been asleep for centuries. Karen followed him in her footsteps, echoing in the narrow space. After a long walk, the tunnel opened into a wide chamber. Racks of weapons lined the walls, blasters, rifles, and other devices she didn't recognize. Some were sleek, others heavy and brutal in design. In the center of the room was a large crate with strange warning symbols painted in faded red. Elias approached it slowly, almost with reverence. He keyed in another code, and the crate hissed open. Inside lay a weapon. Unlike anything Karen had ever seen, a long black rifle with glowing blue lines running along its frame. It seemed to hum faintly like it was alive. "What is it?" she asked. The translator gave his answer, Raylance. Fires through shields. Enemy feared it. Only a few were made. He lifted it with ease, as if it weighed nothing to him, though Karen guessed it was far heavier than it looked, before they could take more from the cache. Karen's wrist began to beep an urgent signal from her ship's AI. Multiple ships inbound. Direct signatures, 3 minutes to arrival. Elias didn't even look surprised. He simply said, "They followed us. Move fast." They loaded as many weapons as they could carry into a hover sled found in the corner of the chamber. The sled floated silently as they pushed it down the tunnel. Outside, the ice plane was already trembling from the vibration of approaching ships. They sprinted back to the vessel, the cold wind cutting through even Karen's insulated suit. Soon, as the sled was aboard, she activated the engines. The Drex ships broke through the clouds above dark, insect-shaped vessels that seemed to swim through the air. Elias took the co-pilot seat and began operating the weapon systems. Karen had barely cleared the surface before plasma fire rained down around them. One blast hit the ice near their landing site, sending a wall of frozen shards into the air. "Hold steady," Elias said, voice calm but sharp. He aimed the ship's cannons and fired. One Drex fighter exploded in a burst of green flame, another swerved aside, but not far enough. Kern's evasive maneuvers lined it up for a clean hit from Elias's rail lance, mounted quickly into the ship's forward port. The weapon fired with a thunderous crack, and the Drex ship was torn in half. But there was still more coming, too many to fight in open air. "We jump now," Karen shouted. Elias didn't argue. She punched in coordinates for deep space. But before the drive could engage, a massive Drex cruiser emerged from the clouds, its dark hull blocking out the sky. Ilias's expression didn't change, but Karen could feel the shift in the air. He stood, strapped the rail lance to his back, and moved toward the rear of the cockpit. "Keep flying. I take care of them."
What do you mean, take care of them? She asked, but he was already gone, through the ship's rear cam feed.
She saw him open the back ramp into the freezing air, bracing himself against the wind. The Drex cruiser was charging a heavy cannon. The glow of its core building in the darkness. Elias aimed the rail lance, the glowing blue lines along its barrel, brightening. Then he fired. Shot cut through the cold sky like a lightning strike, hitting the cruiser's cannon directly. The explosion was deafening, even from their distance. Shards of burning metal rained down as the cruiser listed to one side. Engines failing, Karen didn't waste the chance. She slammed the jump controls, and the ship tore into faster-than-light speed, leaving the ice world and the wrecked Drex fleet behind. When the jump ended, Karen turned to see Elias back in his seat, silent again, reloading the rail lance as if nothing unusual had happened. She looked at him for a long moment. "You're not just a soldier," she said softly. The translator gave his quiet reply. "No, I was a commander." Silence filled the cabin for a few moments, broken only by the hum of the engines. Then Elias looked at her, his gaze steady. "Now we go to Earth," he said. "Time is running out." Karen didn't ask why. She didn't need to. Whatever he was preparing for, she knew it was bigger than the Drex, and far older. Somewhere deep in the quiet between the stars, the hunt had truly begun. The next jump felt longer than usual, though Karen knew the time was the same. The silence in the cockpit was heavy, broken only by the faint hum of the ship's engines. Elias sat with his arms crossed, eyes closed, not sleeping, just waiting. His mind seemed far away, somewhere deep in memories that he hadn't shared yet. When the ship dropped out of jump, Karen's breath caught. Before them lay a planet wrapped in gray clouds. No bright blue oceans, no green forests only. Dead, silent sphere drifting in the dark. This was Earth, the legendary home of humanity. Her scanners confirmed what her eyes already saw. Radiation levels were high in certain areas, the atmosphere thin and harsh. Whatever had happened here had stripped the planet of its beauty long ago. But as she looked closer, she saw shapes on the surface, massive, angular structures half buried in dust. They were too large to be cities. Elias leaned forward, eyes locked on the view. His voice was low, but the translator caught every word. "Home, still here." They descended through the thick clouds, the ship shaking slightly from turbulent winds. The land below was covered in ash and rock, the outlines of ancient buildings crumbling into the dirt. Some were still standing, towers reaching toward the sky like broken fingers. Elias guided her toward a particular barren plain where nothing seemed to remain. "There," he said. Karen frowned. "There's nothing. Underground," the translator said. They landed near a deep crater. Elias wasted no time. He took the rail lance from its rack and stepped outside, Karen following with her scanner. The air was cold and dry, carrying the scent of dust and old metal. At the center of the crater was a large metal plate, circular and covered in centuries of debris. Elias began brushing away the dust with his hands, revealing faded marking symbols. Karen recognized from the derelict ship where she had first found him, from a pouch on his belt. Elias took out a small cube and pressed it to the plate. A deep rumble shook the ground, and the plate began to sink slowly into the earth. A shaft of pale light rose from below, revealing a massive doorway. Inside was a long descent. The walls were smooth metal, lined with faint blue lights that flickered. To life as they passed, the air grew warmer, and a faint vibration hummed through the floor. The passage opened into a vast underground chamber. Karen stopped, eyes wide. Stretching out before her were row after row of enormous machines warships. Tanks and battle mechs, all in perfect formation. Each was covered in dust, but they were intact, as if they had been waiting for someone to wake them. "What is this place?" she asked. Elias walked ahead, his voice steady. "Project Phoenix, last defense of Earth. Put to sleep, until needed again." Karen looked around in awe. The scale of it was overwhelming. This wasn't a military base, it was a vault for an entire army. They reached a central control station. Elias placed his palm on a scanner, and ancient systems began to come alive. Lights rippled across the chamber. Agents hummed. Screens lit up, showing streams of data in the human language. A calm, synthetic voice filled the room. "Commander Elias Vance. Authentication confirmed. Phoenix Fleet status 40% operational. Initiating reactivation." Karen's translator echoed the words, and she felt her chest tighten. 40% of this fleet was still functional, and even that was enough to shift the balance of power in the galaxy, but the moment of wonder ended quickly. Iriscum beeped. She glanced at the display, and her heart sank. Direct ships again. Dozens of them, closing in fast. "They found us," she said sharply. Elias didn't look surprised. "Then we fight." From somewhere deep in the chamber, massive engines roared to life. The warships began to move, slowly at first, then faster, lifting themselves from their resting places. Karen had never seen such vessels sleek, armored, built for speed and power. The sight was both beautiful and terrifying. Above ground, the gray clouds began to glow with the fire of engines breaking. Through, the Phoenix fleet was awakening. Karen and Elias ran back to the surface as the ground trembled under their feet. When they emerged into the open air, the first of the human warships was already lifting into the sky. Its hull was marked with scars from battles long past, and its weapons glowed bright and ready. The Drex arrived moments later, their black ships cutting through the clouds. Plasma fire lit up the sky, but the Phoenix fleet responded instantly. Beams of brilliant energy tore through the enemy lines. Karen jumped into her ship with Elias, lifting off into the chaos above. The comms filled with the voices of the awakened AI captains, each acknowledging the commander. Elias took the weapons controls, his voice sharp and calm as he coordinated the fleet. The translator worked quickly to pass his orders to her. "Strike their carriers first. Break their formation." Karen's fingers flew over the controls, guiding the ship alongside the Phoenix vessels. The battle was like nothing she had ever seen. Human warships moved with deadly precision, cutting the Drex apart before they could react. But the enemy was not giving up. A massive Drex dreadnought emerged from the clouds, larger than anything else in the fight. Its weapons began charging, aimed directly at the fleet's heart. Ilias's voice hardened. "That one dies now." The Phoenix ships shifted formation instantly, focusing fire on the dreadnought. Karen felt the deck vibrate as her own ship's cannons fired. The enemy's shields flared, cracked, and finally collapsed under the relentless assault. One final shot from the rail, lance ripped through the dreadnought's core. The explosion lit the clouds in a blinding flash, and then the great ship was gone. The Drex broke formation and fled. Some tried to hide in the clouds, but the Phoenix fleet hunted them down with cold efficiency. When the last enemy ship vanished from the scanners, Karen exhaled slowly. She turned to Elias. "You just brought humanity back into the galaxy," she said quietly. He didn't smile. His gaze was fixed on the stars ahead. "This is only the beginning. The real war is coming." And in the silence that followed, Karen understood whatever had erased humanity from history before was still out there. It was coming back. The Phoenix fleet moved in formation above Earth, their engines casting pale light across the dead planet. Karen's ship drifted among them, its scanners quiet for the first time in hours. The battle was over, but the air inside her cockpit still felt heavy. Elias stood at the central console, studying a rotating display of the fleet. His face was calm, but Karen could see the weight in his eyes. These ships had been his command once, long ago, and now they were awake again. But it wasn't pride she saw in him, it was something colder. Karen broke the silence. "You said the real war is coming. What enemy could force humanity to vanish?" Elias didn't answer immediately. He placed a hand on the console. Bringing up a star map, the display zoomed out, showing the galaxy in full. A section in the outer spiral arm glowed red, its borders jagged and shifting. "They were called the Keth," he said finally, his voice low. "Machines, but not ours. They learned, they adapted, and they never stopped." Karen frowned. "Like AI weapons," or the translator replied for him. "They were made for war by another empire, long gone now. But when their makers fell, the Keth didn't stop fighting. They kept building themselves. Stronger, smarter. We met them too late." He touched another point on the map, and it shifted to show old battle records. Karen saw fleets burning, planets breaking apart under massive orbital strikes. Human warships fought fiercely, destroying wave after wave of enemy vessels, but each battle drained them. Ilias's voice stayed steady. "We stopped them once. Barely, but the cost was too high. We were winning, till our allies turned." Karen felt a chill. "The betrayal you mentioned." He nodded. "They feared us. Feared that after the Keth were gone, humanity would be too strong. So they sealed our fleets, erased our colonies, destroyed our records. And then the Keth vanished. No one knew why." Karen stared at the map. "And you think they're coming back?" Elias's eyes hardened. "Not think. No. That Drex fleet wasn't here for me. They were here for the Phoenix fleet. Someone told them, and the only ones who would do that are working with the Keth." Karen tried to process it. If this was true, then every species in the galaxy was in danger, and most didn't even know it. "Why didn't the Keth finish you back then?" she asked. Ilias's gaze drifted to the stars outside the viewport. "Because of something we built. Something they couldn't break." He brought up another set of coordinates, deep and uncharted. Space. The Bastion, humanity's last fortress. "It still holds the key to ending the Keth, but it's locked behind codes only I can give. In getting there." He let the sentence hang, as if the rest didn't need to be said. Karen studied. Him. He wasn't just a soldier, he was a man carrying the ghost of a war that had ended thousands of years ago. And now that ghost was stirring again. Her console beeped, breaking the moment. A small incoming transmission flashed on the screen. Wasn't from the Phoenix fleet, it was a wideband distress signal. Elias looked over her shoulder as she played it. The voice was frantic, breaking through static. Unknown vessels, tearing through defenses. No survivors. Then silence. The signal origin flashed on the displaying inhabited system just for jumps away. Karen's stomach sank. The Keth. Elias didn't answer, but the look in his eyes was enough. He turned to the fleet display. "Half of Phoenix stays here, guard Earth. The rest form on my signal. Moments later, the massive human warships began moving, aligning into attack formation. Karen's small vessels slid into position alongside them as they prepared to jump. Karen glanced at Elias. If we go there, we'll be fighting a war no one knows exists. Then we'll show them, he said. The galaxy forgot humanity. We're going to remind them. The stars stretched into long lines as the fleet jumped. When they emerged, the sight before them stole Karen's breath. The system's main planet burned in the darkness, its surface split by glowing rivers of molten rock. Above it hung the enemy. The Keth fleet was unlike anything she had seen. Black, angular ships with no visible cockpits or lights, moving with perfect unnatural coordination. They didn't drift like organic pilots, they turned and accelerated instantly. Like thought made into metal, Karen's sensors screamed with data. No life signs, no heat signatures beyond their engines. It's just machines, the largest of the Keith. Ships rotated toward them. Surface shifted, opening into a weapon array that glowed with a cold silver light. Elias didn't hesitate. All ships break their line. Target weapons first. The Phoenix fleet surged forward, guns blazing. The first volley hit the Keth's front line, tearing through several smaller ships. But the Keth responded instantly, their weapons cutting apart a Phoenix destroyer in a single blast. Karen's hands moved over the controls. Weaving their ship between enemy fire, Elias's commands came fast, each one precise. The human fleet adapted in real time, countering the Keth's movements almost before they happened. For a moment, Karen thought they could win. Then her scanner picked up something new: 3 massive Keth warforms rising from the burning planet's surface. Their shapes almost insect-like, bristling with weapons. Ilias's jaw tightened. They're testing us, seeing if humanity still knows how to fight. The battle raged on, the void flashing with light and fire. Karen's mind was racing. If this was only a test, what would happen when the Keth truly came in force? And for the first time, she wondered if even the Phoenix fleet would be enough. The Keth fleet closed in, black shapes cutting across the stars with machine precision. Every movement was sharp, unnatural, no drift, no hesitation. They fought like a single mind. Karen's ship shook as a blast skimmed past, the heat ripple, making her instruments scream. She pulled the vessel into a tight roll, skimming under the wreckage of a Phoenix frigate. Elias stood firm at the weapons console, his eyes locked on the shifting chaos outside. "Shift pattern Delta 3, he ordered. The translator repeated it instantly. The Phoenix ships obeyed, breaking into 3 attack wings that began circling. The Keth-like hunting predators, the Keth responded in seconds. Their front line collapsed inward, creating a kill zone at the center. Several Phoenix ships took the bait and were instantly torn apart. Karen swore under her breath. They're learning. Elias's voice was like steel. So do we. Fed new commands into the fleet network. And Karen watched as the Phoenix ships began weaving in unpredictable arcs, firing from angles the Keth weren't ready for. One enemy warform exploded, then another, their black holes scattering into silent fragments. But for every Keth ship destroyed, another appeared sliding up from the burning planet below, or dropping from high orbit. Karen's stomach twisted. This wasn't a battle. This was a tide. The largest Keth vessel, the one with the cold silver glowed, turned its main weapon toward the Phoenix flagship. Elias didn't hesitate. "I'll forward guns maximum fire on that target." The combined strike lit up the void, beams and projectiles tearing through the Keth vessel's outer shell. It fought back, blasting holes in 2 Phoenix cruisers, but its glow dimmed. Karen locked their rail lance on the breach and fired. The shot punched straight through, and the massive ship shattered in a silent burst of metal and light. For a moment, the Keth line faltered. Elias seized the chance. Push them back. Show them. The Phoenix fleet surged forward, their firepower overwhelming the enemy's front ranks. Karen's ship darted between wrecks, cutting down smaller Keth interceptors. For the first time, she saw hesitation, or the machine equivalent of it. Her cum lit up with open channels from other species fleets. Observers who had come to watch the battle from a distance. The galaxy was seeing this live. For the first time in millennia, they were watching humanity fight. One voice broke through the noise. sharp, and urgent. "Identify yourselves. What fleet is this?" Karen didn't answer, but Elias did, his voice cold and certain. "Humanity, Phoenix Fleet." The words spread instantly. Across the open comes, whispers turned to shouts. The forgotten species was no longer a myth, it was here, in fire and steel. But the Keth weren't finished. The 3 insect-like warforms descended from orbit, weapons flaring. Their firepower was enormous, too much for even the Phoenix Fleet to hold off forever. Elias studied the tactical map. "We hold them here, or the galaxy falls later." Karen's hands flew over the controls. "Holding them here means dying here. If that's the cost, so be it." The warforms hit the line like a hammer, tearing through to Phoenix destroyers. Karen swung her ship under one's belly, firing everything they had. The enemy's armor cracked, but it kept moving, its weapons sweeping the fleet. Then Elias did something Karen didn't expect. He keyed a command that unlocked the Phoenix Fleet's oldest protocol. Across the CUM, an AI voice rang out. "Sacrifice directive confirmed. Select units preparing overload." Karen's eyes widened. "You're sending ships to self-destruct?" "Only way to break them," Elias said, without looking at her. 3. Phoenix cruisers broke formation, diving straight into the warforms. Enemy weapons ripped into them, but they kept going, their cores building too critical. A moment later, the void was split by 3 massive explosions. When the light faded, 2 of the warforms were gone, torn apart by the blasts. The third was crippled, drifting in space. The Phoenix Fleet swarmed it, finishing the kill in seconds. Silence fell across the CUM. The Keith ships that remained began pulling back, their perfect formations dissolving into retreat. They didn't rush, they simply withdrew. As if noting the result and saving it for later, the burning planet below was silent now. There were no survivors. Karen stared at the scorched surface, feeling the weight of the loss. Elias didn't look at the planet. His gaze stayed on the empty space where the Keth had vanished. "They'll come back in greater numbers. And next time, they'll be ready for us." Karen leaned back in her seat, exhaustion hitting her like a wave. The fleet had won, but at a cost that could not be ignored. In the distance, the other species' ships began moving closer. They wanted to speak, to question, to demand. They also wanted to surreally seethe the humans who had risen from legend to reality. Elias turned to Karen. "Set course for the Bastion." Her eyes narrowed. "We just fought the hardest battle of our lives, and you want to head deeper into whatever this is." "We don't have time to rest," he said. "The Bastion is where this ends, so where everything ends." Karen's hands moved over the controls. The Phoenix Fleet turned as one, leaving the burning world behind. In the darkness ahead, the coordinates of the Bastion glowed like a challenge. The Phoenix Fleet moved through deep space, far from any charted lanes. The stars here were cold, scattered like distant embers. Ahead, the Bastion appeared a massive station, hidden inside the remains of a shattered moon. It was ancient, but its shape was unmistakable. A fortress built for war. Karen stared at it through the viewport. "It's huge." Elias stood at the console, his face unreadable. "It's more than a station. It's the heart of humanity's last plan." As they approached, the Bastion's outer shells began to move. Panels slid aside, revealing long black barrels the size of skyscrapers. Blue light pulsed inside them, like slow thunder. The fleet's AI confirmed. Bastion weapons online. Identification code required. Elias placed his hand on the console. The screen scanned his palm, then his eyes. A moment later, the Bastion's lights flared brighter, and its voice filled the CUMs. "Commander Elias Vance. Welcome back." Kira's skin prickled. The station was alive in its own wets, AI sharp and ancient. But before they could dock, sensors screamed Kaith. They came from all directions, hundreds of ships, more than Karen had seen in her life. Their formations surrounded the Bastion like a closing net. At the center of their fleet was something new, a massive vessel shaped like a jagged spear. Its surface shifting with silver light. Elias's jaw tightened. They know what the Bastion is. If they take it, everything ends. The Bastion's AI spoke again. Super weapon, ready to charge. Time to full power, 10 minutes. Karen felt her chest tighten. 10 minutes against that many ships might as well be forever. All Phoenix units form a perimeter. Hold them back at any cost, Elias ordered. The battle began instantly. The Keth swarmed like a dark tide, their weapons slicing through space. Phoenix warships met them head-on, guns blazing, missiles streaking in long arcs, the void filled. With flashes of light, each one the death of a ship. Karen's vessel wove through the chaos, firing at interceptors, chasing the Bastion. Every shot mattered. Every second bought was a victory. The spear-shaped Keth vessel moved closer, its silver light growing brighter. Karen's scanners warned of massive energy buildup. "They're targeting the Bastion," she shouted. Elias didn't hesitate. "Bring us in close. We'll hit them before they fire." Karen pushed the engines to maximum, the ship shaking. As they skimmed the edge of enemy fire, the Phoenix fleet opened a path, sacrificing ships to shield them. They dove toward the Keth spear. Its hull twisted, weapons unfolding like claws. Karen aimed their rail lance at the glowing core. Elias fired. The shot tore into the enemy's armor, but the vessel didn't stop. Again, second shot ripped through, and the core flickered but. Then the silver light exploded outward in a beam. It struck the Bastion's shields, bending them until they screamed with blue fire. The AI's voice cut through the cum. "Shields at 40%. 5 minutes to weapon charge." Elias clenched. His teeth, not enough time. Karen's ship circled under the Keth's spear, guns hammering. Phoenix cruisers slammed into it, trying to slow its advance. Piece by piece, the great enemy vessel began to break. Finally, a destroyer rammed straight into its core. The explosion ripped the spear in half, scattering burning fragments into the void. Cheers erupted across the cums, but the Keth still came. Karen's hands ached from the controls. "They won't stop. There's too many." Elias's eyes narrowed. "Then we finish it now." The Bastion's voice rang out. Waiting charged. Awaiting final authorization, Elias gave it. Panels along the Bastion's surface split open, revealing a vast central cannon. Energy built in a sphere so bright it hurt to look at. The Keth recognized the threat. They turned everything toward the station. Phoenix ships threw themselves in the way, blocking shots, exploding in walls of fire to protect the Bastion for just a few more seconds. Then the weapon fired, a single beam of pure blue light cut through the void, expanding into a wave that swept across the battlefield. Every Keth ship it touched dissolved into ash and fragments, their black hulls breaking apart like sand. Silence followed. The stars returned. Karen stared at the empty space where the Keth fleet had been. "It's over." Elias shook his head slowly. "Not over. This was only one of their fleets. But now they know humanity has returned. They'll come harder next time." The Bastion's AI spoke softly. "Commander, new signals detected, multiple sectors." Quack, 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 Katha. Quack, 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 quatha, quack, quack, quathaweth, quathaweth, works a word. Quathawath a word, quath a word. Scepters are well. Quath a word. Worthaweth a wath a wath. Quathaweth a weth a wath a weth a wath a weth 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 weth a 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 weth weth a sec weth a wa dan wa 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 fast that I was a dust wafka was a was a so was a success. Karen looked at Elias, her voice barely above a whisper. "What now?" He turned to the viewport, the wreckage drifting silently. "Now, we tell the galaxy the truth. Humanity is here. And we're not running this time. Phoenix Fleet, reformed, battered, but unbroken, and set course for the stars." Somewhere out there, the Keth were gathering, and somewhere closer. Worlds that once forgot humanity would soon call for its help. For the first time in centuries, the legend had become reality. Humanity was no longer a ghost, it was a fire, and it was burning again.